Good afternoon, bringing to order Monday, June 10th, Urban Forestry Board. Thank you for everybody who's called in and who's here present, so. Roll call,
Chair Burke,
here.
Vice Chair Kohler,
Here.
Board Member Pellerin,
Here.
Board Member McChristian.
Here.
Mr. Chair, we have a quorum.
Next thing on the list here will be approval of the May 13th minutes. Is there any?
I just have a couple of typos to point out on page 2. About 2/3 down the page. Ross asked if a remodel on an existing structure be revived as reviewed, I imagine. And then further down that page on the far right, the first line of the final paragraph regarding property owner at the time. It says TIE, but I think it's meant to be time. Yep.
I
What's
think
that?
number 1 and number 2 on, we do the back. I think call to order dates are swapped. Shouldn't the first one be, they brought it to April? 1 and 2.
Oh, yeah.
Right. They brought the.
I just saw a board, the word board misspelled on page 3. Halfway down. Says it has BORAD. But everything else looks great.
Everything else look okay?
Mhm.
I'd like to get a motion for approval of the May 13th minutes with those adjustments.
I move to approve the minutes with the adjustments noted for May 13th.
I second.
All in favor?
I
Opposed?
Mr. Chair, the motion passes.
Third thing on the agenda is visitor communication. I don't think we have anybody signed up.
Tony is here for the agenda item. Okay, board business A.
We're moving on to board business A. The review of the tree preservation layout for Sisters East Portal Mobility Hub Phase 1 design.
Okay, so you guys got in your packet the tree removal and demolition plan. So as we've gone through the development design for East Portal, we looked at how best to get the transportation improvements in there to facilitate the mobility hub with the least impact to trees. And we're essentially able to, with the multi-use path network all the way around the exterior, able to get through without taking out any trees. If there are any, there'll be some junipers on the southern portion of the property next to the McKenzie Highway. And we're basically going to field fit that multi-use path. So we got room to meander it through the trees. We got plenty of room on the site and still keep, ample distance away from the travel lanes to make it a comfortable bike ped experience on those paths. Interior, we're trying to place in parking. We didn't do just a standard parking lot that you typically see. We put clusters of parking spots in different areas. We used a lot of the area of the existing footprint that is to be demoed just because trees were once cleared for it. we're able to get some value out of that. And then we also looked at, what are some of the most unhealthiest trees, and trees where actually removals need to happen for the stand health. And some of those are actually still going to be left in place until we get the bus shelters. We're working on the design of the bus shelters with Cascade East Transit right now. And we're trying to go with more bus shelters, smaller size, so we can tuck them into the trees versus a larger footprint where we're going to have to clear more. But with it, there is a need to do some stand thinning to make the improvements. From the very origin of the project, we knew we had to accommodate a 40-foot long bus for the valley trip that comes over. And that really starts to define turning radiuses, parking bay access for the transit providers, ADA access to those buses, and then ADA access, obviously, to the restroom and to the scenic byway kiosk. So with that, Tony, I'll turn it over to you if you want to add in anything. Tony is our lead designer on the project with Kittleson Associates.
Paul, have really nothing to add other than what you've stated. Most of the trees we're taking out are, we targeted, if we had to make a choice, we targeted the smaller diameter trees and the junipers. But the driveway access to McKenzie is kind of set by the opposite driveway for Les Schwab, and the parking stalls along McKenzie, again, we're squeezing those in between the trees. So we've done, Paul's very creative on the curvilinear approach to the parking lot. We had one that was a lot more straight lined. So he pushed us to challenge our creativity side, and this is what we came up with.
So I think we can turn it back over to the board, and feel free to ask questions as you discuss the project.
I see some, thank you. This looks great. I see some arrows in the dense parking area, but will the general main entry and exit be two-way, or is it gonna all be traffic directed one way in and one way out?
So the entrance off of West Hood will be
Mhm.
two-way
Mm-hmm.
up until the second exit out of the parking lot. From there, it'll be one way all the way down to the McKenzie.
Okay. So
And
there's only one way to get in.
Correct.
Thanks.
What is the total number of trees designated for removal?
Tony, do you have those numbers handy?
I have them. Let me dig them up really quick.
I have another quick question while I was looking. I was wondering if it's possible to kind of identify what already exists there and how much of that's, being brought into this versus what the new portions will be. Isn't there already some existing infrastructure on that site?
So you can kind of see a faint outline of the existing traffic loop right now.
Okay.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah, it's in the back. Okay.
Yeah, we tried to have this loop here,
Mm-hmm.
follow that, again, to preserve trees.
Okay.
And ODOT's requiring us to go up to Felicity Lane and line up with that intersection, so you don't have competing left turns. So. You can kind of see, we try to use as much of that existing asphalt for asphalt that we could.
anybody wants me to zoom in more on the screen.
Well, the intercity bus, the 40-footer will load and unload in the major loop, is that correct?
But we think, at least to start with, probably 90% of the time, they will unload in that first sawtooth with the large concrete area out in front. There'll be a bus shelter there. The additional 2 sawtooths is if you do have some stacking or overlap with competing transit, which in the future, we're hoping if transit's successful.
So it looks like the largest tree being removed or proposed for removal is a 24-inch pine, if I'm looking at this correctly. That would be the largest.
I think we got a 25-inch pine up top.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, okay,
It's
25.
marked in a potential swale area, so we went worst case scenario on that. We'll try to keep it. Try to minimize impact to the root zone, but the sidewalk and that curb is pretty darn close to it.
It kind of brings up one other question I had, was just about, is there, I guess once this is established, then they could come up with some planning for the critical root zone protection and stuff like that. That would be the next process, or?
Through the construction drawing phase,
Okay.
yes, yep. We're really trying to design everything so there's not large cuts and fills to really go with existing topography. There is some elevation gain in the site as you move towards the restrooms that we have to be thinking mostly ADA grades with.
And where are the restrooms on here?
They are right there.
Gotcha.
So we'll have a multi-use path connection out to the Sandy Ann path here. And then we'll have sidewalk connection over to the sidewalk that's going down the Sawtooth for the bus station areas, as well as to these 88 parking spots.
Mhm.
Right now, they have drawn in new concrete sidewalks going to the kiosk. We're still going back and forth on that, does it make sense to do concrete or asphalt to try to minimize impacts on trees? We had better luck with asphalt around trees than concrete, just because the asphalt is somewhat flexible a little bit. Concrete is much more rigid.
Maybe accessible gravel grade compound instead.
It can,
I know it's not the best in the future, but
it's not the best. Yeah,
especially in the orchard or
and it works great in the dry months. During the winter, it starts getting a little mushy. Yep. We are looking to leave the actual chip seal path going to the labyrinth in place. Because when it was put in, it met ADA.
Are pervious pavers an option at all?
For,
Any of the surfaces, or just kind of parking spots? Sometimes they do in.
yeah, although, we're able to accommodate stormwater with all these swale areas. None of these are curbed. So water will be able to just shed off and into these areas. We'll provide additional water for the existing trees there.
Okay.
The pavers to put them on any type of walkable areas, they just move with the freeze thaw. So unless you put them on concrete, which defeats the purpose of
Right.
the pervious material, you run into trip hazards and yeah.
I've seen pervious concrete down Watson Valley where it just fills up with moss.
Yeah, we have good success with permeable pavers. We've used them all over town. Even with cinders, they're not too bad plugging up. But we just don't need them here since we have all this natural landscape for stormwater. Question?
Is the labyrinth still gonna be there?
Yep.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I sent out an email to one of the labyrinth people today, just seeing what their input is on a potential connection to the multi-use path to the south, since there's gonna be parking down there that they more than likely will use.
And I would assume that your intention is to have this open all year long.
Yes.
And so do you plan ahead, like where is the snow gonna go? And you have to-
Absolutely. Yeah, we're at 90%. Jackson, can you pan up, please? So we were just looking at this last week, this curb right here,
Mhm,
we're gonna get rid of so we can push all this snow right into the swale. But
mhm.
that's what we think about, all these areas we were able to use for snow storage as well.
That's what I was thinking about. I was like, it's actually it'll be pretty easy to plow.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
got a lot of spaces to put stuff.
The big push is going to be down here, but we'll just actually plow it going opposite direction and just
Yeah.
roll everything off to the edge of the pavement.
That's pretty good. It's also, I like doing asphalt for the walkways and stuff. We gotta get in with the smaller piece of equipment to
Yep.
move the snow off the walkways if it's gonna be open year round.
Yeah, the kind of the pain in the neck when you're providing lighting is how do you put lighting out there and not have to plow around it? So we're gonna be strategic. Just making sure that those lighting posts are right outside of the sidewalk area.
That looks good.
Yeah, I can appreciate the effort that you guys have made to preserve a lot of the trees there. Looks,
Mhm.
it's like a challenge to
It is, and like I said, when we lay out this, especially this multi-use path here,
Mhm.
this path may come in more like this,
Yeah.
Mhm.
where we don't have to touch any trees.
And that's why Paul mentioned lighting, we're working towards sky certification. So all the lighting that was in here will be dark sky light, which is tough to do sometimes with buff speed.
Yeah, the majority of it is gonna be bollard lighting that is existing out here. So this will all be bollard lighting all the way around the site. This will be bollard lighting all the way up to this point here. There's an overhead light right there for this crossing and also security wise around this restroom. And then you pan up, there's two lights here that are more like your parking lot type lights. One here and one here. So pretty minimal, but you can see bollard light, bollard light, bollard light. 4 feet off the ground, low impact to skies.
So it'll make it attractive place, warm spring night or fall evening to wander around. It's the locals.
Yeah.
Trying to balance that pedestrian safety to security. Part of the master planning team was Chad Davis with the Sheriff's Department, and he was consistently saying, we want to be able to see what's going on. So.
Does anybody need or want to add anything more to it?
I think Tony was getting a count on the total number of trees.
Sent me over an email, 61 trees.
How many of those?
40.
40. Wow.
Thank you.
Are we ready to move on to the heritage tree nomination form?
Well, thank you, Paul, for explaining all this. It's really interesting to see, and I can see that it would be hard to save trees, given what you want to put in there in that particular area.
Yeah, it's tough. You got a really existing native site with, just a little bit of infrastructure in it, and you're trying to put a full-on mobility hub with short-term, long-term parking, and which is why the city council bought this piece of property.
Mhm.
That's what the focus was. So we're trying to get as creative as we can. We've challenged our engineers to not think like engineers do, and they've been great. And I foresee as we get into construction to try to save even more trees as much as we can
Great.
with being able to field fit
Mhm.
things.
I just had one other comment. I was thinking it, because this is an in-house, City of Sisters project, it might be kind of neat to document and kind of learn for the board to observe how the tree protection's done on site once they get going. The kind of measures that are taken to preserve trees, it might be neat to observe and learn about, as
You
it goes.
bet.
But, last thing I had.
Yeah, and I think as we get into the construction phase, we're gonna be bringing this back to you with the tree protection plan,
Cool.
something that you'll be able to go out on site and actually see for yourselves.
You want to have anybody sneaking out, really want to know.
I hope not.
And no old growth trees. Unfortunately, we had those die
Mhm.
this year, which was so sad. Hopefully that is not gonna persist.
Yeah.
Cause yeah, there's just some really nice old growth trees in there.
Well, again, thanks for all the work you put into that and pretty exciting.
Actually, I have one other clarification kind of question. When you take down trees, will it be, when it's all said and done, will those trees be just ground, the stumps ground down, or some left a little bit standing, or?
I think all three. So we're not gonna remove root balls when it would impact adjacent trees.
Mhm.
Depending on where they're at, we'll likely have to grind them down below grade and then backfill. If there's gonna be asphalt surfaces over them, yes, the stumps will be removed. I think we'll have all three sitting there.
Thanks.
We'll move on down to board business B, review of draft heritage tree nomination form and draft recording document.
Jackson, you want to take this?
So, Chair Burke requested, getting some eyes on this, so that's why you folks have seen it again. This is the updated version with the comments that were had in the previous meeting about this. As well as the, recording document that we talked about, so it's based on some other cities that they use. We tossed it over to our legal department and they refined it for the city. You guys get to take a look at that.
So it's a restrictive covenant agreement. I think the application looks good. I know we've already gone through it, the nomination form prior. But yeah, I thought it looked good and the agreement as well.
Just wanted to point out the agreement runs with the land,
Mhm.
not just with the property owner.
Were there any edits that the board had during the previous meeting that did not make it onto this draft that I might have missed? Did anybody notice anything?
No.
I didn't notice anything, but I do appreciate seeing this again since the updates. Looks good.
Yeah, no, I think everything looks good.
And so if this was approved, this would get sent to city council at some point for review as well? Or has not?
It has not. No, we wanted to make sure that you guys were good with it and you can make the recommendation to city council.
Okay.
We're tentatively on a workshop for July. To get this done, so.
Just before break.
Nice.
You know which one in July?
It would be the first meeting.
Okay.
I think there's only one meeting in July.
Do we need a motion for this? Are we good?
Motion would be great to recommend approval to the city council.
Okay.
I move the heritage tree nomination form as presented here to be put forth before city council.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Quick question, is that going to be a workshop for the city council or for approval of the city council? Do you know? That's what I thought. Thank you. I just need it for my notes.
Cool.
Motion passes unanimously. Covers up board business. Move on down to other business. See, there's some public right-of-way park, Leaning Ponderosa Pine near 320 North Songbird.
Jackson, I'll let you take that with Dan, or Dan, we'll turn it over to you, I guess.
Yeah, I've been collaborating with Jackson, so, yeah, the information I get is from, either conversations or photos, but I can see, there was one tree I think Jackson sent me was completely dead. And that was really obvious. And then, there was a leaning tree. I think we covered this, last time. We just didn't have it on I just needed to, make a full report. So the leaning tree, there's no real issues as far as immediate issues. That's what I'm trying to say. The tree is leaning, and there is no immediate issues we should be concerned of. Only with the typical traffic and pedestrian concerns, if there is any. So the leaning tree, I would say observe and continue to monitor it. It was brought up. These are legitimate concerns, but there's no immediate action to be taken.
History has been leaning like this unchanged for quite some time. I observed it during multiple high wind seasons, and it doesn't raise any red flags.
I drove by the tree today, and compared to some other trees that might be challenged in some way, it does have a lot of space for the roots in two directions anyway. And there is very little traffic on one of those roads on Songbird that goes by. And overall, it looks okay to me, except for the lean. And if it did fall, it would be falling away from that nearby house you see, and so yeah, I'm all for keeping this tree.
Just thinking about it and noticing that the concern is about the pitch flow, I think if, maybe in October, in the fall, we could go and scrape that pitch off. Typically, that's from the Sequoia pitch moth. So if we removed it at that time and then wait and see if it returns in the spring, could be something that may be helpful for monitoring that the neighbors would appreciate, I guess.
Does it scrape off pretty easily?
No. Kind of messy, yeah.
There a risk to damaging the tree or?
I suppose there could be if you weren't, if you're thoughtful and, it's pretty thick bark on ponderosa, you could kind of carefully scrape it back, with like a, light poking with a putty knife. I've been trying it out myself on some trees
Yeah.
and then kind of monitoring as they come back in the spring and the larvae are emerging and making those new pockets, Really, it's an aesthetic thing mostly. I don't think it.
Dan, what's your take on, putty knife and sap off a tree?
Oh, I'm agreeing. I don't know if you can see me nodding my head, but yes, the pitch moth pitch is mostly, a troublesome, unsightly thing. It rarely affects a tree unless it's really bad. Yes, and a good way to monitor that is to scrape it off and see if it's reoccurring. So, if it's reoccurring and it's really affecting the tree, it'll stress it and eventually other things will start to hurt the tree. So it's a good monitoring technique to scrape it.
Who wants to do that?
I'll drive down and do it.
I
Have
didn't
a
know if
Saturday
a pressure
afternoon.
washer could work. or-
Yeah.
Saturday afternoon scraping party.
Well, there are ways if a trained eye can really see the difference between the fresh pitch and the old pitch. The old pitch gets yellow, hard, kind of crusty, kind of ugly, tarnished looking, and the fresh is obviously fresh, syrupy, honey looking.
Well, Paul, will you be able to have someone on that, or we'll have Dan do it?
I think we can work with Avery
Sure.
on doing it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
wouldn't mind doing that. And we could talk with the neighbor too. Maybe they wouldn't mind, being if it's really close to their property and they monitor. Are they the ones that notified us of the issue? Was it the neighbor homeowner or?
Jackson, do you know who brought this tree to our attention?
It was the adjacent homeowner.
Okay.
They were concerned about some, dead limbs, falling and hitting pedestrians, children in the neighborhood playing. So we did remove any that were within reach, that were dead,
Okay.
and then they brought up the lien.
They want it gone.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind doing that. Talking with them a little.
Thanks for doing that. Moving on to number 6, board member comments. Does anybody have anything to add?
I have
Yeah,
a,
go ahead.
Trace, go ahead.
I have a couple of follow-up things. We have talked about planting a tree in honor of Dave Moyer, maybe in front of the fire station. I have one tree at home that could be used. It's maybe, if this is the bottom of the tree, it's maybe that big of a pondo. Or I could get a different one from Ponderosa project in Sun River, if we still want to proceed. And we talked about maybe it would be nice to have one that wasn't just a little itty bitty thing to plant. So I'm thinking this summer or fall would be good. Are people still into doing that?
Yeah, what is the process to do that?
I guess we would ask the fire department where they would allow us to put a tree, explain.
Yeah,
You know, Dave had a lot of years of experience with the fire department and was head of our board. Did a lot of things for the city and wore a lot of different hats. So I would think that they would be welcoming of that idea, but we haven't tried.
would it, is there right of way in front of the fire department? Would this be a public or would it be on the private property of the fire department or?
I think the fire
Would that be
department is
considered?
looking to do something for him as well.
Oh,
So,
and combine that.
Yeah, so I think it would be something worth combining efforts and something like that. So I can ask Julie at the fire station
Great.
with that.
Yeah.
And then get back to you, send you an email or something.
Okay, sounds good.
And if something was not able to be worked out, whether, just property logistics, we could do it at Village Green as well.
Oh, nice idea. Yeah.
That's what I was thinking.
Yep, he overlooked Village Green every day.
Every day.
Oh,
Thank you for keeping that on
Sure.
page.
It was sad to lose him so suddenly.
Absolutely.
And the other thing is just follow up on Arbor Day. My bad, I didn't do anything to get things rebooted with Emmy, but I will let you know, Cheryl, because you said you might be interested in working on it for next year.
sure, yeah.
And anybody else? We know.
Yeah.
Thank you for all the hard work
You're
putting
welcome.
that together.
Yeah, it was good to see you out there,
Trees
Paul.
Every day, and
Aw, how are they doing?
we haven't lost any, so they're doing
Great.
great. Yep.
Great.
I think the other thing that I've noticed walking it daily is that a lot of the smaller native shrubs and stuff that got planted last year are really filling in. And I think as that fills in, it's gonna help us to prevent folks climbing over the fence and going down to the creek, because it creates sort of a visual barrier that says, oh, let's go down over here. I mean, right now, there's still enough opening that I still see people down in there. But it really is starting to recover and feeling nice. And so with what was done on Arbor Day and with what the Shoots Council has done with a bunch of students from Bend, after that, there's a lot more of the native shrubbery going into.
Great.
So looking good.
It's looking good.
Yeah.
I have a question on right of way. Is there a standard measurement from the street to the private property? Is it differ in every neighborhood? What is the definition of right of way?
So right of way is the public owned space that typically includes the road or sidewalks or pedestrian paths, swales, drainage swales, areas where fire hydrants are or water meters are. And yeah, it's kind of a mixed bag all over town.
Okay,
On the
Okay.
south side of town, a lot of old 1940 type flats had 80-foot right of ways.
Mhm.
I think the original 1903 plat downtown had 80-foot right of ways as well. So pretty big size right of
Yeah.
ways. I think majority what we require now is our max is about 60.
Okay,
That's to get parking, pedestrian improvements, drainage improvements in the road. end.
okay.
But we have as small as, 30 to 40-foot right of ways.
So are there some properties, private properties that go right to the street? There's no right of way between, well, I mean, the street is a right of way as well, but there's no additional beyond the asphalt to the private property.
Typically not.
Okay,
no.
so there usually is
There's
something.
usually area outside, so.
Okay.
60-foot right of way with a 24-foot street, you have that 16 feet or so.
Okay.
Of right of way outside that. Now, do people landscape right up to the edge of the pavement? They do.
You can
Yeah.
see examples on the corner of locust and Tyee, the gentleman that's planted some wonderful trees that have grown right out onto the asphalt in spite of the fact that there is a right of way there. And
And
if,
it's
if it ever
at
gets,
their own risk.
yeah, if it ever gets improved, those trees would have to come down, which I'm sure would make someone very unhappy. They're beautiful trees, but they are definitely in the right of way,
Yeah,
and they're not ours.
we have some older HOAs that actually require the property owners to landscape to the edge of the pavement.
Oh.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Do we have any streets in town that are private that are maintained by the HOA?
Yes.
Okay, I've seen some that are marked, but I wasn't sure if that was just discouraging signs, or if that was real, they were real signs.
Yeah, back in the day, there was a push from development to build as small as streets as possible. And the city said, okay, if you're gonna build streets that don't meet our standards,
You own them.
then you're gonna own and maintain them. Yep. And then we started realizing that these are not going to work in the future. We'll move on. You got new homeowners. They don't understand that they now have to pay for the asphalt maintenance. So we just required, okay, if you want to have a private street, you're still going to build it to the city standards. So, but since that went into place, I want to say back in 2010, 2012, somewhere in there, we've had nothing but public streets.
I was just curious, because I didn't think we had very many.
Yep.
I had one other business deal is I know we had talked about the down debris that was left behind at the labyrinth from the removals, and I noticed it was still there, and Dan had recommended that we get rid of that, and I just wanted to follow up and see if that was planning on being removed. There's a couple of dead pieces from the top, and then another pretty big chunk there.
Yeah, I can't remember, was there a worry about?
Yeah, beetle, because the reason we removed the trees was that there may be beetle infestation, but then leaving the wood there, if it has beetles in it, would kind of,
Yeah, we can definitely remove those.
I looked it over and I didn't notice any frass or anything, but I
Right.
also don't know about the timing, whether or not I should expect to see frass at this time or not, so.
Jackson, do you know why the arborist didn't remove those?
I wasn't aware there was anything left. Are they larger? Like.
There's a
like
couple,
bowl or branch?
couple of pretty large pieces left, and then,
Of just the bowl?
well, there's some, yeah, the up trunk wood, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and, but
Slant.
one portion is the upper portion of one of the trunks that's dead. It was the really dry, dead material, and then there's another pretty big section of the lower trunk wood from one of the trees. And I think, Dan, remind me, but, you had recommended that maybe we, the remaining stumps even, you might want to debark to prevent creating habitat there for,
Yeah, that's true. So in order of urgency, like the smaller boles, and then maybe the branches as well. And then large bowls, the bugs really don't prefer large bowls, and then large stumps is in the preference is last. But bowls that are about 10 to 20 inches, that's what they really like. The larger bowls, unfortunately they kill these trees, but they don't, as far as the menu, their menu and the preference, they prefer the larger bowls least, and then stumps very least. But all of this bugs can potentially live in. So anytime we cut a tree, we want to dispose and clean up, and don't have this have an opportunity for them.
thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Dan.
The only other comment I had was whether or not I know we had the planning department come last month and talk about the fine and if we were gonna follow up on that. I got some great information from the state community assistance foresters. They provided a bunch of valuable perspective, I thought, and I'd be glad to share that at some point, but whenever that's on the agenda.
Yeah, they were still working on that, so that's why you folks aren't seeing that.
Okay.
But it comes back here, Jackson, to us.
The board did request to see that again, so it sounded like the community development department was agreeable to bringing that back to you folks.
Okay, and then maybe we can talk about what you found.
If they don't, we'll put all the debris in their office. Then they can go bowling.
We good? Anything else?
Anything else?
I think we're good.
Jackson had an update on the Tree Saver software program.
I was hoping to have a really nice good news story for you folks. Unfortunately, it didn't come through in time, but we are getting set up with Tree Plotter. There was a slight issue with the data where all the points got mapped for our tree inventory, but without any of the information such as species, height, and DBH. So they had to do a re-upload with that. It looks like they haven't gotten it up and running yet, but hopefully by the next meeting, we'll have our existing inventory on Tree Plotter, so you can see the species, height, and DBH if we have that information for that tree.
Very cool.
That would be a tool that would be useful with the material you talked about today related to heritage trees as well. You know, identify where they are. What we'll see.
And have that open to any third party that wanted to look at it.
That's something the public could look at with a dedicated login where they wouldn't be able to edit it. It would just be like a view only. It could also be utilized for tracking any kind of infestations or maintenance performed on a tree. Even other data I've told can be useful, such as like carbon sequestration, attaching a dollar value to the urban forest, the benefits it brings to the community. So there's a lot of tools that I've yet to explore, but I'll definitely let you folks know when it's up and running.
Awesome.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, it'll be a really cool tool. So just a general tree update around town. Our mortality and throughout the spring has been decreasing. We have only had our arborist out, I want to say once in the last month, and we're just doing some dead limb cleaning up over on St. Helens. So that's good news. We do have a pretty big fir tree over here that's dead. You've seen it on large. It is a private tree. Code enforcement is working with the property owner to get that removed. We got a couple smaller pondos that are looking stressed in the downtown core. One kitty corner from Lutton's and a bulb out that has, I think, 4 smaller ponderosas. You can see it when you're driving down Hood, just the discoloration. So we're going to watch that. We do have irrigation in that bulb out, so it is getting water. But it looks like we got something going on there. And then we just took out, or are going to take out a couple limbs that died off in a tree next to the open door. And we actually had to top that tree last year. And it's still continuing to decline, but and it's got irrigation as well. So we're trying to nurse it back. We'll keep at it until we lose, full mortality on that.
Is that a city tree?
It is, yep. Yep. And then we're working with the Forest Service on their property. They are going to be doing some right-of-way improvements, a new entrance into their facility, which will require removal of 2 or 3 pretty large ponderosas on their property that they can't work around with vehicle turning radiuses. And so that's going to be something that probably going to happen in the fall. But we'll keep you up to speed as we get closer to final design with those guys. And yeah, we're encouraging them to be creative, try to work around them if they can, but unfortunately lining up their entrance with Main Avenue to really 4-way that intersection, the trees are in the way, so. Jackson, did we have anything else?
That's everything.
Can I ask for one more thing on the right of way? How can a property owner find out what the right of way is in front of their property?
So property pins is the foolproof way, if they can locate those.
What is that? Property,
Property pins, the property corners,
the pins.
yep, which are typically a monumented piece of rebar or steel stake in the ground, typically has an orange cap on it.
Okay.
Definitely harder to find on the older parcels in
Yeah.
town. They can go on Deschutes dial and look at the aerial and get a pretty good feel for it. They can also measure off the aerial off of different structures, whether it be the house or edge of pavement. We use quite a bit, and we can get within a foot or two. And then they can always call us. We can go out and we have a pin locator. We can try to help find their pins, or they can call a surveyor.
Thank you.
And whatever anybody does on their property frontages or anywhere around their property boundaries, it's very important to know exactly where your property lines are, especially when it comes to tree removal.
Yeah.
Yep. And I think last but not least, city forester update. We are working with City of Redmond to figure out a way that potentially Avery could help us out with being our on-call forester, since he lives in Sisters Country. He's very familiar with, obviously, our urban forest management. So we're trying to figure the logistics of dealing with HRs and how to make sure that he gets paid for his existing job, as well as not create any issues with overtime and those type of things. Working through that, we think we can get there. That would, I think, be the best case scenario for all of us, other than we would lose him off the board, but he would still be attending every meeting. So,
Okay.
yeah. We'll have an update on that
Great.
at the next meeting.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for your time, and meeting is adjourned at 3:55. See everybody in July 8th, and I will be able to make it.
Thanks, Dan.
Okay, thank you, guys. And yeah, I applaud Avery as a part of the group if it works out.